Alright, so I am leaving here tomorrow, come hell or high water. Um, I'm waiting on him to halfway pay me back for that phone. Hey, puppers. Um, yeah, so I tried to leave a little over a month ago, and everybody, him included, him especially, was making that, like, impossible. Um, so just gonna have to get it done. But yeah, I worked him a deal because I got him a free $250 phone. Not only that, but he's using my phone plan somehow, even though I separated him from out of it. He went from paying $70 a month for a phone plan to now he only pays $35. So he just used me up again. That's been within the last few weeks. I wouldn't have done it, but he ran over his phone with a lawnmower. I half wonder if he did it on purpose. So, yeah, I'm making him pay me back for the free phone at the very least. So yeah, I'm just get one of my bills paid and then some traveling money. I'm out of here. I had to ask one of his friends to look after my stuff because he's very untrustworthy when it comes to that stuff. He's kind of untrustworthy about everything. He's like half the time got his shit together here recently, but I mean, he's just one of those people you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop always. And that's kind of the story of my life. Everybody around me, it's always just like, when's the other shoe gonna drop and you're gonna fuck my life up because you're bullshit. So yeah, and the thing is like I had a job lined up and everything, a good job, and I had everything lined up and ready to go, and like, I mean, everybody involved just fucked me around. It's super depressing. Like, it's crippling depression, just awful. And I mean, like, some of these people are like so-called good Christian people. It's just like, could have fooled me. But yeah, I mean, I have to go back to Tennessee for at least a minute to kind of like halfway get my shit and my life back together and get a few things in order, and then I have to peace out. Tennessee isn't somewhere I plan on staying for like the long term, a year tops, just to kind of get things back together and move on with life. It's not working out here. It's just not. This dude is just asshole. He is way too crazy. He's unhinged, man. And we have to, if we're gonna be really frank here and like really real, I'm not gonna say all of his shit, but a good chunk of his shit. He has 2 kids that he hasn't seen in 15 years, and it's not because of anything like the baby mama did and baby mama drama in that kind of way where she's being like a vindictive petty bitch. That's kind of like how my ex-husband is. He's a vindictive petty bitch. He's an actual literal deadbeat. So like the literal definition of a deadbeat is a person that doesn't pay child support, and they're always the same type. Well, I didn't pay child support, but I want to see my kid. And I don't understand why my kid wants nothing to do with me, man. And it's just like, really? And they're clueless. They're just clueless about why people just naturally fall off. And his family, they still talk to him. They still keep him around. They still cater to him to some degree. And it's just like, if I even did half that, if I even did a quarter, if I even did 10% of what this dude did, My family, I didn't even do 10% of what he did in life, you know, maybe 1%, because I mean, nobody's perfect, but I mean, his stuff's very extreme. And it's damn sure no problem. It's not some problem with child support. I always paid my child support, but he's an actual deadbeat, you know. But it's just really hard after a certain age to find a guy in your age range that doesn't have some history of being a deadbeat dad. They're just everywhere. It's rampant. You know, you start dating a guy and eventually you find out that they had some child support problems in the past, but usually it's like problems, you know, or somebody will be trying to rectify the problem they created or something, in which, you know, you can forgive somebody that's trying to make it right. You know what I mean? You can forgive somebody that's trying to make the problem better, you know, that they caused. You know, that's a lot easier to not overlook, but, you know, kind of like, okay, about, like, okay, you fucked up, but you're trying to make it right. Okay, we'll see. But, no, he, a lot of them don't. A lot of them don't care. A lot of them never made it right. He really messed up his kids. I found out how bad later on. And, you know, we've been fighting like cats and dogs since. I mean, we fight. We fight bad. And, you know, I try to make people in my life that he's not involved in aware without making them aware, you know, because I don't want to involve them too deeply in the drama, but I want to make it clear to them, like, it's a bad situation. And he's not a good person. Like, even kind of, you know, I get nobody's all good or all bad, you know, it doesn't matter who you are, you know, everybody has shit. But, you know, most people generally tend to lean towards the good end of things, usually. You know, but no, this dude is just fucking corrupt and shitty up and down. I don't want to, like, romanticize his good qualities, because, I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't have a few. I'm just saying I don't want to romanticize his good qualities, because I'll use that to rationalize staying. And it's over, man. It's over. You know, I gave it one last shot, you know, and I was like, fine, I'll try to go back to work again. And I've been on like 6 interviews in the last few weeks, like 6 or 7, like real job interviews, like banks and things like that, you know. And they were messing around. This place has a history of weirdness with work. I don't know what it is, but for the last 4 years, I've been dealing with a lot of weird shit. Like Tennessee and Louisville, they're just outright racist and sexist, you know, but it's in your face, you're aware, you know that they're just a racist, dumbass piece of hick shit, or a sexist, dumbass piece of hick shit, you know. I mean, what's new? But, or both, racist and sexist. But, here it's different. It's a lot different here. And, I mean, I just cannot get this dude under control. I mean, I just can't. I can't figure it out. I can't figure him out. Like, and, you know, it's just to a point, like, and that's the thing about the whole place. And I'm being general here, you know, there are some nice people, but, you know, on the whole, everybody here's a little weird. And I know that people are weird everywhere. Like, I know if somebody from here came up to Louisville or Tennessee, they would probably be like, oh my God, everybody here is very weird. You know, but, you know, I've been here long enough that, you know, I should have acclimated to some degree and be used to their weirdness to some level. I never got used to it. I never adapted. I never acclimated. And, you know, I've lived everywhere. I've lived in Alaska. I've lived in Utah. You know, I even acclimated to some degree to the Mormons. You know, I mean, I wasn't unpleasant to them or anything. You know, I mean, if they came around, I was always friendly or nice. You know, I wasn't like, you fucking Mormon. You know, I mean, I get that way when I'm on like a political or religious rant. And, you know, and when it comes to my personal family's beliefs, yeah, I can get up in arms, but that's in a different setting, in a public social setting. I'm not going to like run after a Mormon with a pitchfork or anything. That's crazy. But uh yeah, I mean, I grew up with very particular, very specific religious beliefs, and why I'm not really religious anymore. I grew up some type of way, and I grew up in a certain type of church, and if my son is the child I grew in my body, and I still have legal rights there, I am adamant that he is not a Mormon. That's my decision. If he wants, when he turns 18 and he wants to be a Mormon and that's how he really feels, he's entitled to that. But until that day, I have a say, and I do not agree with that. Mormons have some very out there, very weird beliefs, man. And, they'll make a fucking Tennessee evangelical or Pentecostal look like child's play with some of their weird shit. Short of like the mountain snake people, those people are all the way unhinged. But the snake charmers, the mountain people. There's people up in the mountains of Tennessee that they hold poisonous snakes, and if they don't get bit, or if they get bit and don't die, it was God. I mean, they're like way out there, man. That's a whole other level of Christian crazy. But and they're there. They're up there in the mountains in Appalachia. But no, the reason why I'm so adamant about it is my mom grew up Southern Baptist, and it scared the shit out of her because it was hellfire and brimstone, and she went to hear preachers preach, and you're all going to hell, you're all gonna die and go to hell, you need to get on your knees and repent. And she said it scared the shit out of her, rightfully so, because I had never been to a church like that until my papaw died. He stayed Southern Baptist until the day he died, and he had a Southern Baptist preacher at his funeral, and that's what he wanted. And we had never heard the hellfire brimstone preaching until he died. I was probably about 12 or so, 12, 13 maybe. No, I was in 9th grade, I think. So I was like 14 or 15. And it was really not great timing, because how my papaw died, he was a horrible drunk. And I mean, he was a bad drunk his whole life. And he inherited the farmhouse from his parents that Mommy and Poppy Castle gave him. And we didn't call it, my great grandparents, nobody called them Grandma and Grandpa. Everybody, even the grandkids, called them Mommy and Poppy Castle. And they had this big, beautiful white farmhouse in the mountains of Kentucky, and a big, beautiful farm. And I remember going to visit it as a kid. And my papa had a peacock farm there for a while, and but he was a horrible drunk his whole life, just awful drunk, just horrible drunk, and no amount of anything. And don't get me wrong, I mean, he had his demons, trust me, especially when you're drinking. And he had his demons being a dad and a husband and everything. But as far as us grandkids go, he was always really gentle and really sweet, very nice. But we weren't allowed around him all the time because he was always, on a bender. And my mom didn't want us to see him that way. So, what happened is he got super drunk one night, and he was a chain smoker, and he got drunk, and what the fire department and everybody concluded was he must have got so drunk that he fell asleep with the cigarette and everything caught fire. They found his body in the kitchen trying to crawl out, and he woke up too late. He passed out drunk with a cigarette in his hand. It was really bad. I mean, my mom was pissed, and she was upset, and it was a really bad situation. And I mean, that's a really rough way to lose anybody. And at the time, we had been losing a lot of people. Like my uncle Jack, a couple years, like a year or two before that, he committed suicide. He took a gun to his head. My cousin Tommy was 15. He took a gun to his head. My uncle Brad died of a heart attack. Then my papa died. We had like a lot of deaths all in a row in the span of like a year and a half or two. My great grandma died in that time. She had Alzheimer's and lung cancer. I mean, everybody was dying. They were all dropping like flies all at the same time. And I kept having to get taken out of school because I was going to all these funerals. And the school was just like, are you really going? And my papa was like the last in line to die for a while, for a few years. And I was in like 9th grade, and the school was just like, are you really going to a funeral? Did you really go to a funeral? Is your mom just taking you out? And my mom sent me back to the principal's office with my papa's death certificate. I mean, and then she would like, when you show them this, have them call me. I'm pretty sure she screamed out on them. I mean, she was pissed. It was really bad. Let me just tell you that it was bad. And that was just it. It's like, they were screaming hellfire and brimstone, and he died in a house fire at his funeral. It was really bad. So, yeah. So, and it's Eastern Kentucky, it's Appalachia. A lot of people have those beliefs, the Southern Baptist, hellfire, brimstone beliefs, and that's fine. But, I just wasn't raised that way. My mom didn't want us to be. And it's not that Mormon churches are necessarily hellfire and brimstone. I've never been to a Mormon service, but I would highly doubt that they preach that way. They all come off very calm to me. But they almost come off a little too calm because they all seem sedated. They all seem like just tuned out, man. They all seem like, it's just like, do I need to like flick the antenna? Kind of thing. So, yeah, that's how Mormons kind of come off. You're just kind of like, do I need to boom boom on the antenna, and we can have a halfway real conversation. That's not based around like a Stanley Cup and a fake tan or Jesus. They're very Jesus happy. And it's really weird because like you see all these channels talk about Mormonism, and yeah, my mom, if my son became a Mormon, my mom would be rolling it. She would come up from the grave and probably murder my ex-husband herself. But I'm serious. Like my family takes that shit kind of seriously. I mean, I already paid my dues with turning away from religion with my mom. I'm not doing it again. I've already had that fight. But at the same time, I can't tell anybody else how to believe because that's illegal. And if my son wants to believe something, he's going to believe, and that's fine. But I refuse for him to be a Mormon. That's just a hard pass. And I'm really not interested in my ex-husband's like midlife crisis, existential bullshit, and all of a sudden he finds Jesus, and he has a drinking problem himself, and or he had one. I don't know if he still has one. Probably. But drinkers, they go up and down, up and down. Some of them quit. Some of them are able to quit the bottle and they're fine and they move on with life, and more power to you. Some of them don't. Some of them, I quit for a while, I'm back on. I quit for a while, I'm back on, and that's fine, but I just don't need his like midlife crisis of I'm quitting alcohol and I'm finding Jesus to affect a 15-year-old. Because I've got a lot of things going on in my life, but I've not ever had a major substance abuse problem. I've never been alcoholic, or had a drug problem. So, I watched, lots of people in my family have one. And that's a big reason why I don't have one, is because I watch so many people in my family, I see what it does to people. I see what, addicts and alcoholics do to other people. Not everybody that's an addict or an alcoholic is necessarily bad. But if you have some bad shit in you, some really bad shit, drugs and alcohol are only going to exacerbate that issue and make you a trillion times worse. So, and it's just like, I have to fight really hard to remember good things about myself. Like, I can at least say I've never had a major drug or alcohol problem. I can at least say that, nobody can call me a deadbeat. I always paid my child support. Not everything about me is just like this horrifying, awful thing. And like people would have you believe that like at night I dress up in a red latex suit and chase people around with a pitchfork. And it's just like, that is not the case. I'm just one of those people. It's just like I spent a lot of years in therapy and psychiatry and a lot of other things to not let certain types of people run all over me, and if somebody's really running all over me, I'm going to get in their face about it a little bit, and people have a really hard time accepting that. That because, especially certain types like addicts and things like that, they want to run all over you. And if you push back on them, they're really quick to be like, oh my God, she's just so mean to me. And it's just like, I'm not being mean, I'm just not letting you run all over my life. And it's just like, and you do have to have your guard up. You do have to have a wall up to some degree, especially with an addict or an alcoholic, because, I've been to their funerals, my papa burned himself to crisp because he could never drop the bottle. So, I don't talk about that much, but, I've seen what it does to people, and I don't judge people. I have a lot less judgment towards like an alcoholic than saying like a meth head, because meth just completely alters everything about your brain chemistry. Not that alcohol doesn't. It's just, I grew up around a bunch of drunks, so it's the devil I know. So meth heads, not really the devil I know. And they're capable of anything, whereas a drunk will just eventually pass out, and I understand their cycles a lot more. I don't understand the cycle of meth head. I don't think there is any rhyme or reason to any of it, or their pattern. I don't think there's a pattern. I don't think there's a rhyme or reason. They're just insane. So it's just, and meth heads, I don't know many alcoholics that have been really like, a lot of alcoholics tend to be functioning. Of course there's some that get really bad on the bender and they get hospitalized and all kinds of stuff, but a lot of them tend to be functioning alcoholics, so they can still work and go through life, and whereas a meth head can't. So and then next thing you know, everything you own is gone, and yeah. And see, I'm starting to wonder about this guy. He's only been smoking weed in front of me, which I don't do any drugs. I don't smoke weed even. And but I don't hold weed against people. You can only fight so many battles, and it's technically not addictive. It's not physically addictive. I think they can get mentally addictive, but that's a personal opinion. So take that for what it's worth. But weed is weed, and it's half legal in half the country, it's just, like I said, you can only fight so many battles, and you can only care about so much. And it's just like, most people that are just potheads, they're usually pretty harmless. I'm not saying they can't be harmful. I'm just saying usually they're pretty harmless. It's usually like, I want to make brownies and watch a movie, man. I mean, they're kind of in that arena. I don't know, his behaviors and stuff like that. I'm getting the sense that there's more than weed involved. I've been around it enough to know that I don't know exactly what he's doing, but I'm getting the sense that there's more than weed involved. Because I'm not an angel. When I was 20, I smoked an ass load of weed. I was high every single day of my life for about 2 or 3 years. I mean, every day was wake and bake, baby. But that was 20. I don't know many 20-year-olds that escaped that. and I didn't really dabble in hard drugs though. I didn't really do a whole lot beyond weed. I just kept it at weed and, the occasional going out and getting drunk with friends or something. But I mean, everybody at 20, 21, 22 is drinking. Everybody's smoking weed, people start dropping off like flies when they start getting into other things, whereas, I went from weed to, I was working full time at the time. Actually, I had 2 jobs for a couple of years there. And then, eventually I ended up getting married and moving on with life. Whereas, the people that got into harder drugs, they didn't, they have nothing to show with their life. Nothing. At the same time, my family all turned on me. My ex-husband all turned on me. And they did it after having me spend 8 years being a stay-at-home mom. And then I hadn't been in the workforce for 8 years. And getting back on that carousel is a motherfucker. And they really just left me high and dry and pretended like I was this crazy monster. And, like I said, my family, and it was a lot of them, like my parents, they had major drug problems. And while they claimed they weren't on drugs anymore for a while, if they weren't, it definitely seriously altered their brain chemistry. They were different people. My little sister, both my sisters have always been spoiled little shitheads, and they've always been extremely angry if my parents ever gave me even a shred of attention or gave me anything. If my parents gave me anything in life, my sisters always had something to say about it. Why are you getting her a Christmas present? Why are you doing anything for her? Why are you doing that for her? Meanwhile, Daddy, I need like $4,000 this month to get the bills paid. And they do that. And my parents let them. And, I don't know whether they had their regrets about that or not. I really don't know. And I don't care anymore. They learned how to live without me. And, they wanted those two. They can die without me. They don't need me. I don't need them. And yeah, this dude, he needed me for another phone because he can't get one on his plan, and I could get him a free phone on mine. And then sure enough, second he gets a new phone, he starts acting weird. Anytime I do anything nice for him, he starts acting weird. He acts really nice up until he gets the thing, and then once he gets it, I'm just dead meat until he wants something else. So, and like last week, he took shit way too far. So I took him off my phone plan, made him get his own. And of course, I pay $60 a month for mine, and he gets $35 a month for the exact same phone plan because they use it as an extension of mine. But, no, I can't get him under control. I don't know what to do anymore. And I'm done trying to figure it out. I've been done trying to figure it out. It's mostly right here the last couple months. It's just been like, hold my breath and wait to see if he just like figures anything about life out. Like how to be nice, how to be halfway sane, how not to interfere in other people's lives, how not to be so angry, how not to be so crazy. um, I don't know what to do anymore. I really don't. Nobody can get through to him. Nobody, anything anybody says, nothing's getting through to him. I've tried every angle, I've tried every tactic, I've tried every way. I've tried being nice, I've been trying being mean, I've tried being, ignoring him, I've tried giving him a lot of attention, I've tried everything, and nothing works with him. Nothing. I mean, honestly, his mom ought to be, she should have been shot for bringing him into the world. He's an awful person. And that's another thing, is he's reminding me a whole lot of my family. And that's a hard pass. Anybody that reminds me of my family and personality and how they approach me, how they treat me, anything like that, that's a hard pass. They can be ignored. They don't need to be in my life. I'm not looking for somebody to be like my family. If I wanted to be around my family, I'd be around them. I was talking to some people on a forum yesterday. We were all talking about, like, we were answering 20 questions in the forum, just randomly, just to shoot the shit, I guess. And one of the questions was like, what's one thing you thought was normal but you learned throughout life that it isn't normal? And a lot of people answered. After I answered mine, I went back through and looked at other people's answers. And one of the people, or a bunch of people, answered how dysfunctional my family is. They were answering the question, what do you think was normal that isn't? And a lot of people answered how dysfunctional their families are. And that's just it. It's just, and I was like, that's a good one. I should have thought of that, because I feel the same way. Like, my family's so dysfunctional. Like, every single person in my family's crazy dysfunctional. And what's worse is, like, they're completely have their heads in the sand about it. Like, if you try to bring up how dysfunctional they are and how fucked up they are, they just turn back around on you, and they're like, you're fucked up, you're dysfunctional, you're this. And it's just like, yeah, I've been in therapy and psychiatry for how long? Because I pretend like I'm okay. You nailed me. So right. So and it's sad, because they, from the public view, just to know them initially offhand, you never know in a million years they're dysfunctional. They hide it well, and that's a hallmark sign of a dysfunctional family, is being really good at hiding it, especially in public. Because the dysfunctional, like the head members of the dysfunctional family, they train everybody to teach everybody how to hide it. It's very common. The thing is like, my first clinical psychologist, I started telling her things about my family, and she hit the nail on the head. She's seen through them from day one. She hates them. She knows all about how awful they are. She doesn't know all the details. She probably knows more now. But there's a lot of stuff even in therapy, because I was unsure of my footing with a lot of my family stuff, because their stuff is not my stuff. And rightfully so, I was scared to reveal too much, because sure enough, they started threatening me the second they thought I would reveal too much. And but no, she probably halfway knew on her own anyways, because you don't get to be a clinical psychologist at her level and be stupid. So she probably half knew, like, things weren't on the up and up with them anyways, to some degree. People like that, when they're that dysfunctional and that fucked up, they rarely are. So yeah, I mean, she saw through them instantly like that. She's just I mean, she's like, I can't diagnose her, but she's just like, she gave me an armchair diagnosis of my mom having borderline disorder. She had me read a book called Walking on Eggshells. This dude, he's definitely a cluster B personality disorder. I'm not sure which one. I mean, he may have multiple. It's my personal opinion that he may be a psychopath. And don't take me to be dramatic about that. Like, oh, he's going to murder me. He's a psycho. I mean, he could, but not all psychopaths murder. In fact, a lot of them don't. But they're corrupt from head to toe. And everything about them is insane. And I mean, they have to be very, very, very heavily monitored to not be. Hey, Bubby. What's up, Bubble Bears? No, he's a psychopath, I'm pretty sure. Like if a psychiatrist and psychologist got together and really started digging around in his behaviors and his past and all the rest of it, I'm sure they wouldn't have a hard time giving him that diagnosis. So, I mean, we have to be real here. And I mean, he has a lot of the behaviors of a psychopath. And that's just it, is like, I'm pretty sure a few people in my family are psychopaths or close to it. And that's the thing about a psychopath. Psychopaths are always narcissistic. Narcissists aren't always psychopaths. So, my family's definitely narcissistic and borderline. I have a really hard time surviving them. And, I always feel like, I seem to be like a magnet for those types of people for some reason. And I'm getting sick of that. So, like, yeah, once I'm out this door, I'm not dating ever again. I mean, maybe famous last words, but I didn't date after Raider for years. And before Raider, I hadn't dated for years. It'd been years and years. I mean, I've not been dating much since my divorce. I've been divorced for 10 years. Really 11. We spent the whole year we were separated before the divorce apart. And no, like I'm done with dating. I mean, the dating pool at my age is scary. And last time it was Raider and all his psycho shit. This time it's this dude. I've not seen anybody with the type of anger and control freak issues he has. He uses money as a control weapon. He uses money as a weapon. And he has very specific history and past. And he's just not getting it. Like, his control and anger problems and the rest of it are a big reason why he's in the place he's in life now. And he needs to change, and I'm not seeing it. And it's scary how bad the cops have his number and people like him's number, because they're so quick to play victim. But like, they've already fucked their life up to the point where everybody knows if they're crying wolf, they're just crying wolf. Like, everything, they're just insane. And, like, they're the types of people you can't mess around with. You can't mess around and pretend like they're a victim of anything. Like, seriously, if a person like him, and I can't get too deep into it, but if a person like him cries wolf too hard, you should really be, like, looking around like, where's the dead body? That's far more likely. So, and that's just it. It's just like, I mean, I don't know if he's like a meth head. I don't think he's that. I mean, if he is, it's the very, very beginnings of one. It's not like deep into it. But he's clearly on something. I'm thinking it's pills, maybe. Which, you know, pillhead, they can be really, really hateful and nasty. Or maybe he's just an angry guy. You know, that's valid too. I mean, his history, his past, his life. He's a pretty fucking angry guy. He's hard to be around. And like today, you know, I told him, I was just like, you know, you need to pay me back. We need to get this shit figured out. I'm leaving tomorrow. And then he just, well, I'm at work and I don't have time for this. I'm standing out here sweating and, you know, this and, you know, I'm just such a deadbeat. And it's just like, yeah, you are a literal deadbeat. You didn't pay your kid's child support. You lost your license over it. I'm pretty sure you went to jail about it. Yeah, you are a deadbeat. I mean, if you want to be